Oh, so this is sort of connected to what we were talking about yesterday. First France, now Brazil unveils a plan to empower the government to censor the internet in the name of stopping quote-unquote fake news. We talked about that yesterday where Macron has those ideas on how to censor fake news, but his ideas have a lot of red flags in them, i.e. he just calls outlets from certain countries fake news without any investigation. That's the biggest red flag. And I presented an alternative. Instead of having these weird definitions on what is and isn't fake news and give power to either the government or Silicon Valley billionaires, why don't we start by just outlawing censored content, by just saying that's illegal for a media outlet to do? That might be something that you could actually enforce, assuming you use the proper definition of sponsored content. And sponsored content should have never been legal in the first place, in my opinion. So, that would be an alternative. Of course, that's not what Macron's trying to do, and apparently they're trying to do something in Brazil. Let's look at this. This is by Glenn Greenwald. Like Glenn Greenwald, awesome. First France, now Brazil unveils plan to empower the government to censor the internet in the name of stopping quote-unquote fake news. The official Twitter account of Brazil's federal police, its FBI equivalent, posted an extraordinary announcement. The bureaucratically nonchalant tone it used belied its significance. The tweet, at its core, purports to vest in the federal police and the federal government that oversees its power to regulate, control, and outright censor political content on the internet that it is assessed to be false and punish those who disseminate it. Okay. In the next few days, the federal police, here's the quote, in the next few days, the federal police will begin activities in Brasilia, the nation's capital, by a specifically formed group to combat false news during the upcoming 2018 presidential election process, the official police tweet stated. It added, the measures are intended to identify and punish the authors of fake news for or against candidates. Top police officials told media outlets that their working group would include representatives of the judiciary's election branch and leading prosecutors, though one of the key judicial figures involved is the highly controversial right-wing Supreme Court judge, Gilmar Mendes, who has long blurred judicial authority with his political activism. So that seems like a good guy to have on board. I don't know anything about the guy other than this writing right here, but doesn't seem like the best person to have on board. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Among the most confounding aspects of the Twitter announcement is that it is very difficult to identify any existing law that actually authorizes the federal police to exercise the powers that they just announced they intend to wield, particularly over the internet. Proponents of this new internet censorship program have suggested they will seek congressional enactment of a new law to authorize the censorship program and define how it functions. And I'm sure these definitions are going to be broad and vague and could kind of just be enforced at will on maybe people they don't like, maybe people that are dissident to the government, maybe people that, if their government is overtly right-wing, maybe people that are left-wing are in danger. This is bizarre. And this is going on the world stage now. And, keep in mind, there is something very fascist-esque when you hear Donald Trump saying fake news, fake news, fake news. And the weird thing and kind of like the weird dichotomy in all this is that when Donald Trump calls CNN and Washington Post and these other corporate outlets fake news, in many ways, he's not necessarily wrong. Hear me out. He's not necessarily wrong in principle, but he says that stuff for all the wrong reasons. He calls outlets fake news when they say something about him he doesn't like. That's the only, if you say something about Trump he doesn't like, he'll call you fake news. That's all it takes. It's just a measuring contest for this dude. Everything he does is just a measuring contest. He doesn't like Jeff Bezos. Gee, does he not like Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos is a predatory capitalist that won't pay his workers a living wage and is slowly becoming an emperor? No, he doesn't like Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos has more money than him. Does he not like the media because they're corporately controlled, so they have conflict of interest at every turn? Because they do. They're owned by Comcast and by plutocratic billionaires that have a certain agenda and by people that just want to maximize profit and don't give a shit about news. That's who owns the media. Does he not like them because of that? No, he doesn't like them because sometimes they're not nice to him. So it's for all the wrong reasons when he goes against the media. So Trump against the media, there are no good guys. You know, the corporate media are not the good guys. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no decent work that comes out of the corporate media. It's not like every article is A or B, but it's one of those things. Systemically, it's a huge problem. Our media structure is a huge problem. It should not exist the way it does. But when you use some kind of authority to determine what is and isn't free speech, the results could be catastrophic. I mean, Thomas Jefferson once said, and I think this is an interesting quote worth noting, especially in a case like this: if I had to live in a society with newspapers and no government, or government and no newspapers, I would pick newspapers and no government. I think he had a point. And that's something I always love to remind people of. Civic engagement used to be so important in the United States. That used to be something that we harped on so much. And some of like the early founders of the United States as it became, and when I say founders, I'm not referring to the people that were there first. I'm saying the people that came later and did horrific things. Those early founders did a lot of terrible things. Just throwing that disclaimer out there. They did a lot of terrible things. However, one thing I think they were right on about was when it came to civic engagement and being informed. I mean, freedom of the press, you hear that a lot in the United States, freedom of the press. That actually referred to not just like the freedom to say what you want without fear of being, you know, punished or executed or whatever. That also referred to accessibility of the media, meaning if you had a point of view and you wanted to get your newspaper published, the government would help make sure that happened. And that's what they did. An average metropolitan area in the United States prior to the 20th century would have like 10 different newspapers, because constitutionalists, federalists, and socialists, all those groups, they had their own newspapers. Because what the government would do is they would fund, they would give you subsidies, because newspapers were distributed via the postal service at the time. So if you were distributing a newspaper, you could get your newspaper disseminated regardless of your financial power. They would give you a subsidy to make sure your newspaper was out there. That concept of freedom of the press has been completely lost. And now we're going a hard direction in the other way, because yellow journalism has been an issue for so long in the United States and in effect in other parts of the world as well. Now it's going completely the other way, where they're using force to suppress voices. And that is Orwellian. It's like we've proven both Aldous Huxley and George Orwell right. We've proven Aldous Huxley right in the fact that we've given our news and information over to corporations and entertainment. We've just given it away. We said, yeah, take it. We don't care. We're quote unquote amusing ourselves to death. And then on the other hand, now you have stuff like this where they're using force to stifle alternative voices. So, I mean, this is a real worldwide problem. And you know, I got to say, I'm against legislation like this because of what it could lead to. Hey guys, thanks for watching. That was a clip from Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. What does that mean? That means I log on to a stream and people tweet me articles over on Twitter at Ron Placone, or they use our Reddit subsection, which is just Get Your News On with Ron over on Reddit. And that's how we build the show. I'm seeing all these articles for the first time. We are literally getting our news on together. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone so you can participate. And this show streams live every Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please do tune in. If you want to support this show, you can do so over on patreon.com/Ron Placone, where for as low as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts every week, exclusive videos, free tickets to shows when I'm performing in your town, and more for as low as $1 a month. Please do consider it. Thank you so much for your support. This has been Get Your News On with Ron.